With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You discover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. Just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. I'm still working on the website. We're going to be updating the website, so I don't want to put that out there right now. Tasha Adams is the ex-wife, or soon to be, trying so hard to be the ex-wife of Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oathkeepers. You could find her at thatgirltasha.com. And also, too, this is very important. She's got a GoFundMe, okay? And it's called Help Me Divorce Oathkeepers Stewart Rhodes. Now, you can't be more sincere than that. She wants a divorce. The GoFundMe, Help Me Divorce Oathkeepers Stewart Rhodes. Tasha Adams, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we get into the whole thing with the Oathkeepers and Stewart Rhodes and Help Me Divorce Stewart Rhodes, tell us about yourself. Who is Tasha Adams?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on that. I was married to Stewart for, I guess, I separated about 26 years in. And we're just, trying to do our thing here, trying to live our life normally, trying to learn how to sort of reacclimate to the world after being basically under lock and key for decades. So.
Now, what about, do you work now? What do you do?
I do. I mean, I'm 50 years old and I'm working a, minimum wage. Yeah. I'd rather not say, but just, and I just kind of working on my book, and it's hard to pick up, so many decades later. When I first met Stewart, I was in college and I was a dance instructor, and that was a lot of years ago. So it's kind of hard to. I'm kind of set back, almost like when I was 18 again.
Yeah, 50 is still very young, though, and people can go to That Girl Tasha on Twitter. You see a picture of the beautiful Tasha Adams. She's a beautiful, beautiful young woman here. You can check her out. And check out her GoFundMe, too. GoFundMe, Help Me Divorce Oathkeepers Stewart Rhodes. Oh, boy. Okay, so you said you're married to Stewart Rhodes for 26 years. What was it like when you first met him?
I would say, knowing what I know now about abusive personalities, I would say it followed a pretty familiar pattern to a lot of people. He was very, very charming. Seemed a little overly attached to me. Lots and lots of attention. That's sort of what they call now love bombing, right? The initial phase, and then, slowly just started to become a little more controlling as time went on. And that just progressed and progressed. Yeah.
Now, what about you hear these stories about how they separate you from your friends and your family and stuff? Did that happen?
Yes, absolutely. But he's also very, very intelligent. And he's very aware of sort of covering his tracks in that way. And so often I would think, gosh, I used to have so many friends. Why don't I have friends anymore? You know, I was just a teenager at the time. He's 7 years older than I am. And I thought, gosh, it must be my fault. You know, he would always sort of make me think it was all me. You know, he would say the words that sound right because he would always know what to say. He always knows what to say. You know, he would always say things like, oh, you know, you should spend more time with your friends. And, you know, I wouldn't want anyone to think that I was being controlling. You know, I'm not like that. You should go spend time with him. But then when I would try, there would always be something that I needed to do to help him out, or there would always be something. But he would remind me of all the time. I tell you all the time, go see your friends. So I didn't really understand that it was just him, you know, manipulating me, and it took you know, he didn't progress to the really kind of violent way that it wound up for a lot of years, because he was very aware of legal lines and very aware of not getting himself in trouble. But that really progressed once we were isolated out in the middle of the woods, for sure. But yeah, so definitely that very standard pattern, which I wish I would have known a little more about that then. You know, very textbook narcissist, sociopath. You know, all those little steps along the way. And he came from a whole family of people that were very good at verbal manipulations, and a whole family of ministers and multi-level marketing people and, you know, scam artists and that kind of talking to the crowd and motivate you to buy the next, you know, expensive cassette tape set or whatever to join their multi-level marketing campaign, you know, that type of thing. And so constantly controlling people with manipulative speak was a huge part of how he lived.
Now, Dakota was telling me, too, that he was a valet parking in Vegas.
Yes.
Well, what hotel?
He was 25 years old. Binion's Horseshoe.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they're still around.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I worked at the Murray's. I was 18. He was out of the military for a couple of years, parking cars for a living. And he came in for dance lessons. And that's how we.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because, truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You discover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
Now, what about politics back in those days? What were your politics like? What were his politics like?
Yeah, I grew up in a Mormon family, very, very Mormon community. But my parents were Democrats, and this was a huge secret, obviously. My mother was very pro-choice. So I was pretty adept at sort of bobbing and weaving when it came to politics. when conversations got hot, I got out of the kitchen. That was just how we lived. And but yeah, it was pretty clear Stewart was very conservative. But you know what? At that point, Southern Nevada, 1991, every single human I had ever met up to that point in my life, I think, had been politically conservative. So it didn't strike me as anything unusual. He didn't seem super political. He was supportive of the war, 91. But that's about it. Not a whole lot. He worked at a gun store one day a week, and parked cars the rest of the time. And yeah, that's it. Really, honestly, politics didn't come up a whole lot. And even when he said he wanted to go to school and higher education and all that, he was mostly said he was focused on becoming a history teacher. You know, so and it wasn't until later on when he started doing really well that he he said that he wanted to switch over to law school. And
Right.
even then, go ahead.
Now, how did he get into Yale from Vegas?
Well, it was rough. It was really rough. But you know what? He got in everywhere, not just Yale. He got into Harvard. He got into Stanford. He got into Virginia. He got he got into Columbia, I think. So there were a lot of factors. One is he was older. One of the things that a lot of times they look for in law schools like that is they're going to look for variety. They don't necessarily always want just, rich white kids. And of course, he comes from a mixed ethnic background. He grew up, his family were migrant farm workers, the only family that he knew. His father was white, but he didn't really have contact with him. And so he grew up in a very sort of mixed background, The only grandfather he ever knew was Filipino. His mother didn't have running water or anything other than dirt floors until she was 11. So they had that kind of background. He was from Nevada, which that's another thing a lot of these law schools look for is they want variety. They want like geographical variety. They don't want everybody just from the East Coast. And he was very intelligent. He graduated summa cum laude, 4.0. He was president of everything. He was president of the Political Science Honor Society, and he was president of the, the pre-law this and the. He organized journals that hadn't been published in years. We're all getting republished again, and so, he was extremely active in school, chiefly because that was the deal he and I had made, is that I would work full time, put him through, pay for everything, and then he could just go to school at his leisure, and he could take that time to excel, and he could take that time to join every club there was and participate fully so that he could get into a really good law school. And so that's what he did, and he got in everywhere.
But he never actually became a lawyer, though. But he was ghostwriting briefs and motions.
He did. He was a lawyer in Montana, and I believe he was also admitted in Colorado. He worked for a short time. So right after law school, he for the Arizona Supreme Court, and then from there we moved to Polson, Montana, where he worked for an attorney there for about a year.
And what would make you move to these rural places like Montana? Did I lose you? I might have lost your audio here. Is there something? Can you hear me? I'm going to try hanging up and calling you back. Okay. Okay, we got disconnected there for a second, but we're talking to Tasha Adams, the soon-to-be ex-wife of Stewart Rhodes, the Oathkeepers founder. And I was asking you, what would make you move to these rural areas like Montana to go work for a law firm? A Yale graduate moving to Montana, what was the motivation behind that?
I mean, he claimed it was about having a good lifestyle for the kids, being backed up to nature and national forests, but honestly, I think it was multi-part. One is he didn't really want to work very hard, and he really did not want to be in a traditional law firm, because he had already been fired from one for not doing enough work, and I think he wanted to be surrounded by people who were a little more laid back, but he's also a very fearful person. Even before starting Oathkeepers, he always thought the government was out to get him. He was always wanting to be sort of hidden away. And I think that's part of, and, obviously he wanted to be surrounded by other people who were like-minded to him.
And your son Dakota told me that he did a lot of ghostwriting for attorneys. Any attorneys in Nevada that I would recognize the name?
I think he did some stuff for Joel Hansen, who's very much a part of the Liberty movement. But Joel Hansen fired him because he was horribly late with all his work. He'd been fired from the law firm that he was working for in Nevada. That's when he turned to ghostwriting because he couldn't pass the bar in Nevada.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
Passed it in Montana, but not Nevada. So he did work as a lawyer for about 1.5 years in Montana. And he was also admitted in Colorado, I believe. But yeah, he could not pass the bar in Nevada. So yeah, he did some legal writing. He did some political type legal writing. I'm trying to think of people's names. I think Kermit Waters, possibly. That was his name. Somebody he wrote for.
Now your son Dakota was telling me that there would be long periods of time where there'd be no income, where you were eating like storable food, like apple chips and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he was extremely lazy, and so once he got fired, I mean, it was hard because at that point, I mean, now you're at this point we're up to about 2007, 2008. At this point, it's obvious to me I can't leave him alone with the kids. Like, I cannot work outside of the house. I just can't, because he can't be left alone with the kids. Every time I walk out of the room, there's just some kind of disaster. And so I had to be present all the time whenever he was around. So I couldn't work. And he would take on these legal writing jobs. And these jobs, I mean, they were willing to pay. Some of these places were paying $150 an hour for his work, and it was endless work. He could have worked 20 hours a day if he wanted to. He could have worked, but honestly, 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day, an hour a day would have been enough. I mean, to sustain our family. He was always trying to keep us living as cheap as possible, would always try to get us living in, try to find, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom houses. And at that point, we had 5 children. Why do the kids need a bedroom? They can just sleep in the living room. Why would they need bedrooms? They don't need that. So just everything was always about trying to keep costs down as much as possible so that he could work, the least amount possible. And he would just not even make enough money to pay the rent. I mean, we were the only thing we owned of value ever was rifles. And so that was the only thing that was ever, would save us, really. Was constantly pawning guns or even car title loans. Of course, there's no credit at that point. Of course, he's never made payments on student loans. Of course, he, my decent credit was completely destroyed once we were married. He just ran up all my cards and, yeah. And, he's borrowing money from relatives, so he can't borrow anymore. And it just blown through everything and everyone. And, yeah, he would just not make money. If he thought the landlord wouldn't kick us out, then he just wouldn't make enough money to pay the rent. And it was just constant. There was never food in the house. We were always eating food storage just for years. I mean, I think I gained 70 pounds after I divorced him just because there was access to food. It was just a crazy, crazy lifestyle. And nobody knew. I mean, nobody knew. He would run out and buy groceries if someone was going to visit. He'd make it look like he'd make a big show out of it. He'd bring home a whole truckload of stuff from Costco and have Oathkeeper people unload it into the house. So there would be witnesses to him buying food. But, that's every 3 months or so.
Right. Now, you were saying, too, before the Oathkeepers, though, that he was always concerned that the government was watching him and they were out to get him. Like, what was his reasoning for that? What did he tell you why he felt that way? Again, with him being very intelligent, I think he understood that it was illogical. And so I would see him behaving that way in a very paranoid way. But if I would ask him about it, he would either try to hide it or he would come up with something that sounded reasonable.
but it was always unreasonable. But he was paranoid. I don't know if it's just how he's built, if it's from his, is always crying that he was an abused child. So was everybody. We don't live like that. So everybody was abused. We don't all try to overthrow the government. But I just remember him, even when I was very young, one of the first times I noticed that, I think it was about 19, and we were in a parking lot and my car overheated, and he lifted up the hood to check under the hood, and I sat in the car, and he was very angry when he got back in the car because I had stayed in the car. Mm-hmm. And he went on and on about what a dangerous situation this was for him to check under the hood, because somebody could have walked up behind him and slammed the hood down on his head and attacked him. And that I should have been, his security while he was doing that. And from then on, I just thought this was so odd. He would have me, if he was looking at something or working on a car or something, I would have to stand at his back and be his security guard. And I just kind of thought maybe this was a side effect from a terrible childhood. Maybe he's just very, very fearful. And I'll fix that.
Yeah, right.
He clearly had. I was going to fix it all. He had all these psychological problems. I was going to fix them.
Well, let me ask you this now, because I was talking to Dakota, and he mentioned that there was a period of time where he got involved in painkillers. Do you think maybe any of these paranoia-inducing drugs like methamphetamine or cocaine or even marijuana or Adderall can induce paranoia? Any signs of that?
I never noticed any of that until much, much later. He's such an odd personality. I actually had never even seen him, drunk. I would see him maybe drink a glass of wine or something, but he's also sort of this control freak, But, even when he lost his eye, even in the shooting accident, he requested to be switched over from morphine to Tylenol, like the next day, as soon as they removed his eye. But as time went on, it was after Bundy Ranch. We had those pills. He would do training deals with dentists. Of course, when you live like that, you don't go to doctors. There's no insurance. Kids need the dentist, and we could never afford anything. And so he would make these deals with dentists, or in that case, some kind of dentist in Nevada that ran some kind of, I don't know what he ran. He was just an odd guy. And he trained his family for Moshe training in exchange for free dental care for the kids. And then I don't know if Stewart bought this stuff from him or if he just handed it to him. But when we left there was this one huge bag of antibiotics and another bag of hydrocodone, multiple large bottles, like the size of an Excedrin bottle in Costco, right? There's about 6 of them. And he said, well, for the apocalypse, when everything goes down, people get injured, they get sick, they have a tooth problem, we'll have this. So, okay, again, chalk this up to, okay, sure, when the world ends, I'll get right on that. Put him in the back of the closet, didn't really think of anything about it because our lives were so insane. That was pretty standard. And it wasn't until after Bundy Ranch when he started acting really crazy, just not right in the head at all. That's when I realized everything was gone. The antibiotics were gone. He had blown through all those from constant eye infections and tooth infections, and he had taken all that hydrocodone probably in over 6 months' time. So that was the first time I noticed that. Now, he definitely had, his own secret life outside of our house. And I'll probably never really know what all went on. I didn't personally see any use of drugs in that time before that, but that's definitely something he would have actively hid from me, So it's really hard to say, but he was like that. He was very fearful, the very first fearful person right from the beginning.
And do you think you were naive enough that you wouldn't notice?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially early on. Yes, absolutely. That Mormon upbringing, I just thought, I really thought everybody was great. Like I thought bad people, ran around in ski masks or something.
Right. Now, what about the
I still am like that.
What about the creation of the Oathkeepers? Do you think this was a sincere endeavor where he really wanted to protect the Constitution?
No.
No?
At the time, no. I mean, at the time, I thought, okay, now he's been fired for. At this point, now we're talking end of 2008. This is when he started Oathkeepers. For a long time, he was talking about wanting to start a nonprofit, not wanting to start a nonprofit. And I knew that this would be disastrous because he's completely incapable of dealing with any kind of paperwork. I would file the taxes. I would, do all that type of thing. And that was around the time that I think 2007 was probably the last time I filed him. And then he just took over and said he was going to have to handle it from there. And total control.
And I'm guessing he just stopped filing, I'm guessing.
I think so. I'm pretty sure, since I've spoken to multiple federal agents at this point, it looks like that stuff.
I'm taking over, honey. It's like Ralph Cramden, the honeymoon.
I mean, I actually caught. He was when I was filing taxes. There was a question. There was a bunch of money that he made doing legal defense that year. Doing public defender work that he claimed wasn't actually his money. And then I found all these checks, I just found all this money that shouldn't have been there to pay tax. I asked him about it, and basically he got caught hiding money, and so that's the last time. So that's it. That was the end of my access to anything banking related. My name went off everything immediately.
But
I knew he was terrible at paperwork in a nonprofit org or any kind of organization. I mean, what's the first thing you think of as a normal person who does things like, folds your own laundry and throws out trash? And a reasonable person thinks of a nonprofit and thinks, wow, that sounds like a lot of hassle and paperwork.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing you think. That would be so difficult. Like, you'd have all these envelopes for receipts and everything would always be a mess and be just really stressful. And that was the first thing I thought is, this is above what I'm willing to try to help organize, especially if he doesn't let me have access to anything.
Well, if he's so disorganized, how did he grow it into such a big organization?
Well, yeah, most of it is that he had help, a lot of help from me, and a lot of help from other people. He would burn through a lot of people, and some stuff just never got done, and that was part of the reason it didn't get bigger. I think if he hadn't gotten in his own way over and over again, it would have been a much larger. It probably would have rivaled the NRA at some point.
Really?
Yeah, I think it would have. I mean, as it was, he was up to 40,000 dues-paying members at one point.
Really?
So,
Now, what about like early on? Because you were there early on. Did you notice any signs of like infiltration or informants coming in trying to manipulate things?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, that happened a lot. Yeah, there was definitely. I mean, I always thought, if I were the U.S. government and there was an org compiling these lists of people that want to join this group, no matter what legal happy thing it says it's doing, right? It doesn't sound like it's really doing that. Do you know? Like, I mean, when it first started, we had a lot of Democrats. Not most, but some on the board. The board was almost half Democrats at first, or at least disgruntled Democrats. So, I mean, because if you look at the original meaning of it, I mean, they used to just call it, the ACLU for libertarians. The idea was.
With New Year's resolutions, many of us will make a vow to eat healthier, and that's a good thing. But what about our beloved pets and their nutrition? Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because, truthfully, all pet food is dead food, which is why we created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. We bring their food back to life with live vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in a tasty formula that your dog and cat will love. You can improve your pet's coat, digestion, energy, and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20. Get a 100% discount with promo code BESTFRIEND. You just cover the shipping. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code BESTFRIEND. Bring your pet's food back to life with Rough Greens. So good, your pet will ask for it by name.
complete opposite of what it became. Of course, if you take those principles that it claims it was adhering to, they would have been on the side of BLM right after George Floyd, but they weren't. So this is the complete flip of where they started, or when they claim to start. I think he was just trying to start a group so that he wouldn't have to work very much. He could get paid and he could get attention, which is something he, as much as he prioritizes not doing anything all day long and just being super lazy, there's nothing he loves more than attention. I mean, that's his true drug. That's his true addiction, is attention and spotlight. But yes, I would say, if an actual government agent came in sort of undercover to join Oathkeepers, I think that would be hard to detect because they're very professional. Also, they don't really have to play much of a role, right? It's pretty close to what they are, right? It's already appealing to, members of armed forces, police, federal police. It's already that type of group.
Yeah, if you check their background and it shows up they were an agent, right? So it's supposed to be. So
I think it would be really hard to detect, and I think that was something early on. They kept saying, well, even if we do get infiltrated, what does it matter? We just try to turn them too. Right.
Now, was it racist from the origin, you feel, or?
No, because this was a big deal to Stewart. Well, one thing is, I think it's important to mention, I mean, culturally, I would say, yes, it's racist as far as how, at this point, the feel of it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's obviously trying to hold on to a very old-fashioned sort of white America ideal, right? But one of the things that I know a lot of people don't like to talk about is that Stewart making sure everything was as anti-racist as possible it wasn't because he was a good guy. It was because that was a tool he used. That was a very, very important tool, and it's part of why no other militia ever got as far as he did, because they would give in to that, they would become racist adjacent, right, or invite racists into their group, right? Then you can't recruit for the military legally. Right? So he made it a point to always have, he would have people volunteer who did nothing but scour forums trying to see if any leaders were ever showing up on any racist forums, and then they would be kicked out with a big, letter that was copied to a million different people, like, you are being kicked out because you posted on this racist forum. So that was huge, but it was why he was able to wiggle his way in, it was, and on a personal level, he tended to be very offended at any kind of racism because he grew up in a Spanish-speaking household. He, especially anything toward people who are Latino, he'd get very, very upset. But clearly there were racists in the org. Clearly, he was, toward the end there, he was sharing a stage, with racist things that he swore he would never do. But in the beginning, I would say no, and it's good. It's a really good point to bring up, because he could never have recruited as heavily within the military and within active duty had he not done that.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned a couple of times Bundy Ranch. Now, were you present at Bundy Ranch as well?
No.
Okay.
No, but that was a break from him. It still bothers me. He would call and he would just be like, should we keep going here? There's going to be a drone strike, and I would, you get torn because it's like, yeah, this is stupid. Bundy Ranch was stupid. I told him so before he left. It was one of the few times I offered, advice after about 2012 or so, where I just said, don't do this. But at the same time, I don't want him to come home.
It's terrible.
So, it was just kind of a nice break. He was gone for a while.
Oh, my God. And, don't worry about the drones. Don't worry about the drones.
It's fine.
I'm glad, though, you mentioned the drones, okay? Because I have a little personal interest in all this. I did some of the first reporting on the Millers. You familiar with the whole story? Right. Now, it's my understanding that they originated the whole drone strike story that caused the big... That's what I heard, yeah. You don't have any information about that?
all I know is I know Stewart, and I heard that they were sort of druggy type people, and that he had given them money he felt sorry for them.
Oh, really?
And he gave him some cash to leave. He said he gave him some money to leave and get a hotel room. But usually what that means is, Stewart was angling for, a hooker, or he would always target people like that, because he could take advantage of them and offer them cash. And he was always looking for hooker types and druggy types and people he could take advantage of. So, I mean, my first thought when I heard that was he was angling for some kind of weird thing.
Okay, that's interesting. Because the Millers, their background, they were at Occupy Wall Street and the Million Mask March before they got involved with this whole. And they came out to Nevada to follow Vanderbeek and that whole party who was running for governor and stuff like that, and guys running for sheriff, that whole party. Yeah. And from my understanding, they were police informants too. We uncovered that. And that they were the ones who started that whole rumor. They're the ones who started that rumor about the drone strike.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Huh.
And for the audience that doesn't,
I know what you're
the audience that doesn't know, they later on went and shot a couple of cops at Cece's Pizza.
Really
very suspicious, the whole circumstances around that too as well. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I know you mentioned informants earlier, but for sure informants came and went a lot. Although they were generally fairly easy to pick out, and so they didn't tend to stay in leadership. They seemed to move on to lower hanging fruit, but they would show up. They tended to have really obvious talking points, trying to engage people in hypotheticals or things.
Gotcha.
They tended to be pretty easy to figure out when they did, and they would do background checks and things wouldn't look right. They did have a couple of guys. I think there was one guy involved in leadership. I was convinced didn't seem to fit any of the other sort of what you look at when you think, oh, this guy's probably an agent. Well, just this guy's probably an informant. But there was one guy in particular. It was just such an odd guy, and I'm still convinced he was CIA. It was just such a strange thing all the way around. I was convinced of that fully, and then Stewart went somewhere with him, and they were out in D.C., and a goose flew into their car, into the windshield, while they're going down the freeway, and the goose just disintegrated on the windshield. And then he had to explain to them why that happened, because it was so odd, and he had to admit that, yes, this looks like a sports car, but yes, it's an armored car. And then he had this whole, I think it was some kind of Mercedes or something, sports car, and it was an armored car. And he got caught having an armor. He had to explain, well, we went to this auction, and it was a good deal, and it was armored, and, it's just like every time I kept saying, I think that guy's CIA, something would always happen. And it's just something bizarre like that. It was always something weird around that guy.
Now, did anybody ever approach Stewart with a deal and say, hey, we want you to come work for us, why don't you give us information?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of get in between with this stuff, because I know, Revolver News or whatever, they have this ridiculous conspiracy. It was all, the entire insurrection was Democrats, and but, the truth could easily be, Stewart could still be very much guilty, very much tried to overthrow the government, stop the election, and still possibly did some informing along the way. I don't know. I know that he met with the FBI, the same agents who are handling him now, after Bunny Ranch. And I know he started acting really strange after that. And then whether that was just, there's so many other possibilities. He has so many, mental issues that sometimes it's just hard to understand motivations of someone like that. Like we're so separated from society at that point. We're just in the woods, just completely out in the woods. And, maybe his mental downgrade was just because he had us so isolated, or maybe it was because, they had this big blow up at Bundy Ranch. They're basically all drawing guns on each other, and he got kicked out by someone. And it was this whole dramatic thing. Maybe he was depressed, or maybe it was the drugs, or maybe the drugs were due to, meeting with the FBI. I'll probably never know. But I think that there's definitely a possibility that he did some informing along the way. His old roommate is in prison right now. After I kicked him out, he wound up living with a guy who wound up going to prison, partially due to recordings that we don't know who recorded him speaking, but someone close to him recorded him talking in private conversation. So I suspect that was probably Stewart. The kids think his car was probably tossed because he picked them up to visit with them, and his car was actually clean. They thought that was so unusual that they they must have tossed his car. So I just it's so hard to unravel. I mean, he's mentally unwell, and it's just so hard to understand. And I drive myself crazy trying to understand his motivations and why he did the things he did, and
what a nightmare life. The whole life, the whole lifestyle just must have been such a exhausting. So what was the final straw? Yeah, what was the final straw that said, "Hey, we got to get away from this guy"? That's it.
It was probably, I think, about 2016 or so. It's right after Bundy. I mean, for years, basically 2012 forward, I mean, I knew he was a sociopath, and I knew that this was unhealthy, and it was really just me trying to stand between him and the kids all the time. I just didn't think it was possible to leave him. Like, I didn't think there was any possibility like that, because he made it very clear he's friends with, his people are on the police department, his people are in high positions, his people are, everywhere, and he's very connected. And then he would tell me these allegories about how women get locked up in mental institutions all the time. This is like little threatening stories, like, oh, yeah, it happens all the time. They just lock you up and you never see your kids again. That's how it goes. Tell me stories about how attorneys always get full custody of kids. And, when you're living with a psychopath, you are present when your kids are home.
Yeah.
When you divorce them, they get days at a time with them unsupervised. So there were a lot of reasons I thought it wasn't possible. But then 2016, he was getting more and more violent. And at one point, he started choking my 13-year-old daughter. And it was just like, we might die trying to get out of here, but we got to get out anyway. We have to get out somehow. Because we're going to die anyway. We're going to die staying, or we're going to die going. And we might as well just try to get out. And basically spent 2 years planning, and it really hinged on my adult kids growing up and being able to get jobs and cars and cell phones and money. And I wouldn't have gotten out without them, for sure. Particularly Dakota, wouldn't have gotten out without him. Absolutely would not have. Okay. And really thought we weren't going to get out alive. Was not sure. I thought I gave it like 50-50. Really wasn't sure if we were going to get out alive.
And very impressive young man, Dakota.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what about now that you're telling your story, what's the reaction from his supporters? The people that support, are they saying, oh my God, we didn't know, or she's crazy, she's lying?
Maybe I got about 2 or 3 I didn't know from people who were kind of close to Stewart. I noticed slowly over the last 2 years the Oathkeeper bumper stickers are starting to go off the cars. I mean, I live in a place that every other house has got the Trump flags and and everybody had Oathkeeper stickers everywhere, and there were Oathkeeper signs as you entered into town. It wasn't even put up by him. An unrelated person. Didn't even know he lived there when I put it up. That's how. But I noticed. But, on the other side of it, on a personal level, in addition to being completely crazy and violent and scary, he was also a regular jerk. So, I mean, he had been kicked out of the dentist office, kicked out of the mechanic shop, told never to come back to the church. So, on a personal level, there are some people who still feel like they support that cause, but they sort of make an exception because they don't like him on a personal level. And I feel like there's a bit of a vibe in town of like, maybe we're Democrat-leaning now because of trauma, so they excuse it. I think there's this kind of vibe. I don't know. I mean, that's how we're living now. If he is acquitted, which I don't think will happen, a new indictment was just dropped today. I haven't read it all yet. If he's acquitted, we're in trouble. I mean, he's pretty much was detained partially because of my testimony. So, and, legally, I'm still not divorced. He did everything he could to stop it, to delay it, to cost me money, because my legal help costs money. His is, whatever he feels like writing up. He's just delayed and delayed and delayed. He's actually been successful in not paying child support or even having a child support order. All this time, it's killing me. I'm reading these indictments with $7,000 on guns, $10,000 on night vision. It's just like this whole time he wasn't paying child support, so there's that. And then just running through the courts. I finally got an attorney who came right in. She's just adorable. Ann Sherman out of Libby, just amazing. She just came right in. We're going to handle this, but she's just been the last few months just been like, this is crazy. I think he's just impossible.
One more time. GoFundMe. Help me divorce Oathkeeper Stewart Rhodes. You can't get any more. And the website is thatgirltasha.com. You can find her also too on Twitter with the underscores. _girl Tasha.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter arguing with everyone. I get on Twitter just to fight. It's the whole...
But that's what we all do. Now, on the run-up to January 6th, were you guys in communication? Did you have any idea what was going on?
So after separation, Stewart hung around Montana a little bit, back and forth. He was pretending to the courts that he was here. But for the year prior to J6, we hadn't really had contact with him. Every once in a while he would show up, and maybe I think twice that last year he showed up into town. He would send a one-line email saying, I want you to see the kids at this place. And then I would send a one-line email back, okay. And Dakota, or my other adult daughter at the time, now 3 of my kids are adults, but would drive them down and just kind of stand guard while he takes the kids to lunch or something. So that was the extent of the communication, but I think I hadn't heard from him in quite some time. I knew something weird was going to go on because he actually put money into the account that he was supposed to put child support into. Like, he put in enough to make up for a couple of months, probably 6 months of child support, and he had never done that before. It didn't really make a dent in what he owed, but it was odd behavior. And then he closed the account, which he was court ordered to leave open. So I knew something was up. So the only way I could really track him and see what he was up to is just to watch. He still had Twitter at the time. He wasn't deplatformed yet. And so I would just watch that Twitter and just see if I could get a clue. Where is he? What's he up to? And I saw some really alarming stuff sometime in November. He starts talking about civil war, which he's very adept. He likes to walk legal lines. He's very, very careful in his speech normally. He goes out of his way not to say anything that could be seen as illegal, which is one of the reasons conspiracy was one of the few things he could ever be nabbed on. Because every individual act, if you take it on it by itself, is not illegal. It's not illegal until you paint the whole picture. And he's very careful about that. But he was always fearful of conspiracy. But anyway, so he was saying some things that I thought went over that line that he tries to walk so carefully. But I can't tell, he terrifies me. Every time I see him, I feel like, if I just hear his voice, it's, I'm not rational when it comes to him always. I can't tell what's real and what's not sometimes.
Now you say that they
because of the fear.
They used your testimony to withhold bail. When did you first come into contact with the FBI and Department of Justice and that kind of stuff?
That was not until after he was arrested. Yeah, so I just watched his Twitter really closely, and when I saw him talking about Civil War, I just went over to all the Twitter feeds of extremists, people who study extremism, and saw that they were all also talking about it. So one, I was glad they knew about it, and two, I was glad I wasn't crazy. He was actually acting insane. So that's when we were like, okay, something's going on, and just watched that real closely, and then once I saw the stack, I knew that was him. There's absolutely no question that he was behind all that. Nobody else does that. No other militia is going to organize to that level. I didn't speak with the FBI until January 14th, after he was arrested. But I've had some pretty good conversation there. I have FBI dude on my texting tabs.
Right.
He's one of my top. I just thought of something. So but I was
Do you have a lawyer? Do you have a lawyer helping you in all this, in all your dealings with the FBI and the information?
No.
Really?
No.
Fascinating.
No.
Fascinating.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Couple quick questions. Okay. From your viewpoint, right, and your talks with the FBI and stuff like that, off the record talks and things like that, how much do you think he was coordinated with the Capitol Hill police and with people in the Trump White House?
I think, purely speculation,
Sure,
based on his behavior and knowing him and knowing how fear-based he is and how careful he is, I thought right away in November when he started tweeting civil war, someone told him it would be okay to do that. That he would get out of this, but he needed to incite, and he needed to do it big, and he needed to do it big enough. And as long as he did that, everything would be okay. Because he suddenly threw caution to the wind. He's always been very quick to paint all his followers in a light that could get them in legal trouble, but he's always been extremely careful about not getting himself in trouble. And that's the first time he put himself on the line, which he would never, ever do unless he thought he had a get out of jail free card. I think someone told them something. My guess has always been that he had a direct line to Trump, but not to Trump intentionally for operational security through multiple people.
Yeah, if he was doing security for Roger Stone that day, right, that would be enough, you think, or you think it extends further than that?
Yeah, I think it could very well be Roger Stone. I think he made those connections. I think maybe a couple years back he started all of a sudden supporting Trump out of nowhere. So I think he made some of those connections back then. Back at the time when Oathkeepers got a front row invited VIP seats to Trump rallies, when they started sitting in that front row saluting the president, that I think is the smoking gun to look for. And I think he was offered something, and I think he was supposed to only go through those 2 or 3 people, those channels, to speak, to get messages back and forth to Trump. I think right before you see messages where Stewart sounds almost despondent. You see some messages where he says things like, Trump's not going to do anything. No one's going to do anything. So then I think that's when he received a message. It's not enough. There's not enough, fury. There's not enough people. And then I think he was maybe given a message one more time. Hey, let's just do it. Just, if you do it big enough, if there's enough mayhem, we can still make this happen. And so then he went all in, but he was still kind of careful. So I think that's what happened. And then that further, I've talked about that a lot, and then that further seemed backed up by one of the Oathkeepers saying that there was a call that evening where he tried to speak directly to Trump, which sounds like Stewart. If they had a protocol that was, hey, keep us 3 people apart, but then out of fear, he used force, right? He purposely tried to connect with them directly. And that compromises Trump, right? That compromises all the things they've probably agreed to, right? But then that also puts Trump in a position where he has to try to get this done. So this all sounds like the type of thing Stewart would do. And I think that's just my theory of what I think happened.
Well, real quick, because we're past time. I didn't even take the half break again. When I was talking to your son, we didn't take the mid-break, so apologies to the sponsors, but this is important stuff. Now, what about, you mentioned before there was a gag order, but the gag order's been lifted?
No, I'm just ignoring it.
Oh, really?
I'm really taking chances. I've been, I don't discuss the court case. I don't discuss the details of my divorce.
Oh, it's a gag order in a divorce. It's a divorce gag.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Initially, there was some papers that said, I can't even talk to anyone who might talk to social media, or I'm liable for it. Stuff like this. Just like you can't speak, and definitely affected my ability to get my book out there. But I think my interpretation of it now is I just can't discuss. My divorce is completely sealed. It's like it doesn't exist. And
yeah, it's an attempted coup. This is serious business. We got to talk about this. This is not this is not gossip about who took out the trash. This is serious stuff, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, we're out of time. The GoFundMe is GoFundMe. Help me divorce Oathkeepers founder Stewart Rhodes. And you could find the link to that at thatgirltasha.com. And you could find Tasha Adams on Twitter at thatgirltasha with the underscores after that and after girl. Thank you so much. I'd love to have you and your son back again to even, because we both kind of left off at the same part, right around the insurrection. So I'd like to really follow up on all that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. You have a good day.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.
Yeah.